Now next is the classes, right? As I told in the previous, that a class is a template for an object and defines the data fields and methods of an object. The class methods provides to manipulate the data fields. The data field of an object are often called as an instance variable. So we'll take some example here. Program to calculate the area of a triangle or area of a rectangle, right? So data member or instance variables are length and width of a rectangle, right? We are given the length and width of a the class, right? And get data is a method which is going to accept the values for the length and the width as a parameters, right? We send the parameters to get data function from the main method, okay? And rectangle area is a method which is going to calculate the area of a rectangle by multiplying the length and width of the rectangle, which is going to find the values. Length into width will be return the length and width. Now class rectangle area. So this is a rectangle area is the name of a class, and you know that the function name or the program file name also must be the same, right? So public static void main string args rectangle rect1, it is an object, and we are going to create new rectangle, that is object creation. Rectangle 1 is an object which we are created, and using that object we are going to access the methods. So get data, calling the method using the object with dot membership operator. See there, object 1, the rect 1, okay, rect1 dot get data 10 and 20. So when you are sending the parameters 10 and 20 to the get data, now in turn the x will be assigned to 10, right? And y will assign the value y 20, right? And length, x assigns a length and y assigns a width, and length will be 10 and width will be 20. So in the int rectangle area, it is going to multiply the length and width. As I told that the objects are going to communicate with the methods, right? When the objects are going to communicate with the methods, right? So rectangle area value will be system.out.println the area, which is going to find the, which is going to store it in the here. We are going to call a rect1 dot rect area here, right? And that is going to store, calculate and call the rectangle rect area method, and it returns that value to the area 1, and your area 1 will contain the values, that is the area 1. So it is going to print the area 1 values, okay? After defining the class, it can be used to create object, but by instantiating the class. Each object occupies some memory to hold its instance variables, that is its state. After an object is created, it can be used to get the desired functionality together with its class. Okay. Now creating the instance of the class or declaring the objects. So here rectangle rect1 is equal to new rectangle, then rectangle rect2 is equal to new rectangle. Okay. The above two statements declares an object rectangle 1 and rectangle 2 is of type rectangle class using the new operator. This operator dynamically allocates a memory for an object and returns a reference to it. In Java, all class objects must be dynamically allocated. As I told, whenever you are going to use a new operator, it dynamically allocates the memory space to its objects, right? So it all objects must be dynamically allocated. We can also declare the object like this, rectangle rect1, declare the reference to objects, or to allocate the memories to a rectangle object, we can use rect1 is equal to new rectangle of like this. It is going to allocate the memory in rectangle object. Okay. So this is about the how we are going to create a class. Inside the class, how the instance variables are created, and how the methods are going to access those instance variables for the purpose of calculating or for the purpose of inputting the data, how we are going to send the parameters to the function, and how they are going to access the data inside the rectangle area. Okay, so this is the two methods where the instance of the class, or we are going to declare the objects. Rectangle, rect1 is equal to new rectangle. This is the one way where we are going to create using the new operator the memory space of the objects, right? That is allocating the memory space for the objects. Okay, then the other one is with the just a reference. We are going to create a object. See now, so rectangle rect1, it is a declaration of the reference to the object. That means we are declaring the object class variables under the rectangle. Now rect1 is equal to new rectangle, which allocates a memory in the rectangle object. Now come for the next topic, that is the we use a new operator to create a rectangle one, and new operator to allocate the memory space for the objects, right? Or we can directly use just to create the object with the use of the with the use of the class name. So simply it is a class variable which is going to use to declare the objects. Now come for a very important constructors, right? So constructors and garbage values in the Java programming, right? So as I told, the any number of in the first statement itself, I told that you have the constructors, right? You can declare the constructors in your program, okay? And any number of constructors you can use. But you can have only one any number of constructors you can have, right? So that we call it as a overload constructors. In Java also we use the constructors. Java also supports the features called as the constructors, right? It can be very tedious to initialize all the variables in a class each time an instance is created, right? So even when you add convenience functions like setDim, okay, it would be simpler and more concise to have all the setup done at the time of the object is first created, right? Because the requirement for initialization is so common, Java allows the objects to initialize themselves when they are created. This automatic initialization is performed through the use of the constructor. Okay, a constructor initializes an object immediately whenever the object is created. Okay, it has the same name as the class in which it resides and is syntactically similar to a method. Once it is defined, the constructor is automatically called immediately after the object is created, before the new operator completes its job. Okay, then constructors look as like a little strange because they have no return type. As we know that C++ and Java are the building blocks of building blocks of functions are the building blocks of this programming language, right? But what happens here is your you will not, for constructor you will not find the return type. You will understand, you will got worried, what is this, there is no return type for this method, even though constructor is a method. So okay, but because no return type, not even a void also. Void is a which is in, even if you don't return value, then it is represented with a void. Even then also void is not there. This is because of the implicit return type of the class. Constructor is a class type itself. It is a constructor job to initialize the internal state of an object so that the code creating an instance will have the fully initialized usable objects immediately. Okay, so it has the same name as a class name and syntactically similar to the method how constructor have explicit return type. Typically, you will use a constructor to give initial values to the instance variable defined by the class or to perform any other startup procedures required to create a fully formed object. All classes have constructors whether you define one or not, because Java automatically provides a default constructor that initializes all member variables to 0. However, once you define your own constructor, the default constructor is no longer is used. Okay, so I told that the you can have that is constructors, which are different types of constructors. I already discussed in the first module, right? You have the default constructor, parameterized constructor, and the copy constructor, right? So default constructor, which always initializes all its data members to 0. Okay, and parameterized constructor depends upon the type of the problem. We are going to give one parameter constructor, two parameter, or three parameterized constructors. Okay, parameterized constructors are the constructor where we are going to send the parameters inside the parentheses of the constructor. So parameters to the constructor, you probably makes much more useful with the different parameters which we are going to send it. Okay, then here is a simple example. However, the to that illustrate the uses of the constructor. See, a simple constructor class my class. I have given the name of the class itself is my class. See, you have to remember and you have to follow the rules for naming the class names and all. As I told, the first starting letter must be the capital for the class name. See there, my class. Okay, so int x, my class x is equal to 10, right? You would call constructor to initialize the object as follows: class constructor demo, right? Public static void main string arguments. This is a common for the main method of the Java program. My class T1, my class T2. What you are doing? You are creating two objects, T1 and the T2, which are belongs to the my class. New my class and new my class, that is allocating the memory space for these two objects, T1 and the T2. So, what I am doing here is I am adding the T1 value with the T2 value. Okay, what I am storing, x is equal to 10. Okay, so when you are going to access a T1 dot x, it is going to assign the value is equal to 10 plus T2 dot x, that is also assigns the T2 also assigns the value is equal to 10 itself, because when you are taking the value of x with a T1 object, it assigns a value is equal to 10 only, and when you are going to take the value of this one, okay, that is also going to take the value of that object is also is equal to 10 itself, right? So T1 dot x is also 10 and T2 dot x is also a 10 only. Okay, so what happens here is both the T1 and T2 are going to assign the value is equal to 10 itself. Okay, then come to the parameterized constructor. As I told, the most often you will need a constructor that accepts one or more parameters. parameters are added to the constructor in the same way that they are added to a method. Just declare them inside the parentheses after the constructor name. So we call that is a parameterized constructor. See here what we did is about the simple constructor which initializes the value. Okay, so here we use the constructor with the parameters. So we are going to send some of the parameters to the constructor. Okay, we are assigning some parameters to inside the parentheses of the constructor function. So that is why that is called as a parameterized constructor. With the use of the parameterized constructor, we are going to declare the constructors. Okay, so that is the parameterized constructor. See now, so simple example which is going to illustrate the parameterized constructor. We have taken the class. My class is the name of the class, and you know that constructor name is also same as a class name. So it is going to take the my class int I. So here parameters. What kind of integer data type? Int I. One parameter with the integer data type. Okay, int I, x is equal to I. So means whatever we are going to send to I, that assigns to your x value. So you would call constructor to initialize the object as follows. See now, my class T1, new my class. See in the previous example, we are not sending any parameters. See here, there is no parameters have been sent to your constructor. Okay, now initialization is done. So with the use of the constructor function, we have done the initialization. So here directly we are sending the parameters to your constructor function. So when you are going to create a T1 object, right, that is going to send the 10 as a value to the I. In turn, that I is going to assign to x. Okay, so x will be is equal to 10. Okay, now second parameter, see here, when you create a T2 object, you are going to send the parameter is equal to 20, right? In turn, the 20 will be copied into the I. Okay, that in turn I will be assigned to the x. So T2 will assign the 20. Okay, now again when you are trying to print the value of T1.x and T2.x, right? So it is going to print the T1 value as a 20 and T2 value is equal to 20, 10 and 20, because the T1 created and take the value 10 and T2 created and take the value 20, but because it is produce the result as a 10 and 20x, T1 object will be 10 and T2 object will be 20. Okay, that is how we are going to use the that is a static main method, that is a T1 T2 my class T1 and T2. Okay, so this is all about the parameterized constructor. We are already discussed in the copy constructor in the first module, right? And normally your Java program which is going to use a default constructor where it initializes all its data members to 0. Suppose if you don't use a parameterized constructor, suppose you are going to use a different parameterized constructors, then one parameter, two parameters and three parameters, right? And the corresponding parameterized constructor is going to be executed. Okay, that is the suppose if you are you are creating three objects, one T1 with a one parameter, T2 with a two parameter, T3 with a three parameters, right? The order in which you specify will not matter, right? The order in which you are going to call or make that constructor function to execute with the appropriate number of parameters, right? It is going to execute the one parameter constructor and two parameter constructor and three parameter constructor correspondingly. Okay, that is how the parameterized constructor, whenever the object is created, the corresponding constructor function automatically executes. You know that these constructor functions will not call with any object. Okay, and automatically they are executed whenever you are going to create an object. The corresponding constructor is going to be the executed automatically. and even this constructor must be declare the some of the rules which I mentioned in the previous class is same rule applicable even in the Java also. Constructor name is same as the same class. The job of this constructor is to initialize the objects, right? And it should be declared in the public section of the class only, and it constructor cannot be virtual, and any number of constructors you can have in your program, that is called as a overloaded constructor, right? And this constructor cannot be static members, right? So like that you have different rules you have to follow whenever you are going to use a constructors. So parameterized constructor and default constructor as I told.